All right, I'm in the Gospel of John, chapter 11. Gospel of John, chapter 11. And Jesus has just raised Lazarus from the dead. He has done that. So now we're going to go into verse 45 to see what happens now, what's going to happen now that Jesus has raised Lazarus from the dead. Starting out in verse 45, this is John chapter 11, verse 45, it says, "Then many of the Jews who had come to Mary and had seen the things Jesus did believed in him." All right, so there were a lot of people who had gone to Mary. It doesn't mention Martha. We don't know necessarily what that may imply. But I think it's interesting to see that it just refers to Mary in this case. It could just simply be because it was Mary who last went to go and speak with Jesus. We don't have that much information to go on, but I just noticed that. So we have these Jews who went to go see her, probably her sister Martha, and perhaps mourn a little bit for Lazarus, But there were many of them who were there who saw what took place. They saw Lazarus getting resurrected from the dead, but not all of them believed in Jesus. And you might wonder, how could that be? How could it be that there would be some people who would be there who would witness? They would be witnesses. They would see it with their own eyes. They would hear it with their own ears. They were participants, in a sense, of what took place, of this resurrection, and yet they still won't believe in Jesus. All right? Well, in order to deal with this, it's necessary for us to spend some time thinking about the definition of believing in Jesus. Just what does this mean? What does it mean to believe in Jesus? Now, of course, to answer this question well, you have to ask the people what they believed. What did that mean to them? And it's the same thing today. It's no different today in the sense that there are a lot of people who will say that they believe in Jesus, and you have to ask them, or just simply wait for a while, wait for some more conversation to take place. And people will normally reveal in various ways, they will reveal what that might very well mean to them. So you don't have to be so direct about that kind of a question in all cases, asking people, so what do you mean? What does that mean to you to believe in Jesus? They may not even care what that kind of a question is, or they may really have no interest in defining that. It may not be that important to them, which would tell you some other things. But my point is that in order to really answer this question well, you really do have to consider the individuals. All I can do right now is speak about this from a general perspective. All right? And today, what it would mean to believe in Jesus is different in many ways from the way that the people would have considered believing in Jesus back then. For example, what people were in general thinking, what people were thinking was that to believe in Jesus meant that you believed in him as the Messiah, which meant the Savior, which meant the King. All right? In effect, that's how that works out, is it means that he is going to be the King, the divine representative, or the representative of the divine, who would be the king there for the nation. He would establish the kingdom, and the kingdom would then be a kingdom that functioned according to the Mosaic law, and it would be independent from the surrounding nations. The people would be obedient to God, and God would bless them in return with all that he promised that he would do in accordance with the law. And the Messianic king would be the leader who would lead the people and punish them, of course, if they failed to comply. But he would lead the people in a way that the nation as a whole would obey adequately, and would observe the commandments of God and be blessed in return. And then we would have the relationship that God originally established for the nation of Israel that they never really fully obtained in that sense. All right? And so to believe in Jesus was in effect to believe in him as the one who would establish the kingdom. That was the predominant belief at that time among the people. All right, there was no discussion really about the gospel, about the forgiveness of sins, about the restoration of the Holy Spirit. We don't have any indication that there was really any discussion about this at all. Now, there were some times when Jesus would speak of these things. He would proclaim these things, but really only so far, just a little ways, just enough so that we can see what he's talking about. But in general, to be able to see what he's talking about, you have to believe the gospel and you have to be resurrected by the Spirit of God to understand the things of God. So to what degree people would have understood that before, I would say hardly much at all, especially when you see what happens in the development of the early church and the struggles that they have and the things that they deal with in discovering the implications of what Jesus did. All right, so to say that there were many people who believed in Jesus, probably the most predominant way to understand that is to understand that with the definition that they believed that he was the Messianic King. And so in believing in Jesus, most of these people were probably then waiting for Jesus to assert his authority and to engage in war as would be necessary in order to establish the kingdom. Because the Romans were in power there, and they're not going to just say, okay, we give up, we're just going to go back home. No, there's going to be a fight. All right, there's going to be a fight. And when the battle is over, then Jesus, as the Messiah, the people would believe that he would be the victor, and the Messianic King would be established, and the kingdom would be functional, and all would be fulfilled. So this is predominantly what people would be believing when they say that they believe in Jesus. Now, they can also believe that he is the guy who can heal people. I believe in Jesus. I believe that he is the one who can heal people. Obviously, he can even resurrect someone from the dead. So, he can do all these good things. They can believe in Jesus in the context of what he taught. This is another way that they could say that they believed in Jesus. Or, of course, a combination of all of these. But to believe in what he taught, well, what did he teach? He taught the law. That's what he taught, because that was the covenant that was in effect. He spoke of the new covenant to come. He proclaimed it here and there on occasion, but for the most part, what he was doing is he was teaching the old covenant. That was the covenant that was in effect, and it was important for people to embrace that so that they would eventually be able to understand that they would have no hope whatsoever of entering into the kingdom of heaven outside of the grace and mercy of God. The teaching of the old covenant, the teaching of the law, was the preparation for the people to be ready to receive the forgiveness of sins, the restoration of the Holy Spirit, and to be made alive, to be born again, to become children of God, so that they would see the kingdom of heaven when they physically died. That was what was coming next. But these are the transitions in order to get there. So to say that many of the people believed in Jesus, you have to define that a little bit more. You really have to work on a definition of that. So if you consider from that point of view, then it can be reasonable to understand why there were some people who did not believe in Jesus. They could believe in him as the one who is performing many signs, many miracles, wonders, healings, that sort of thing. He has a lot of good things to say. They can believe in him to that extent, but will they believe in him as the Messianic King? Well, for those who would say no, they have a reason. They have a good reason as to why they would not believe in Jesus as the Messianic King. What's the reason? Well, what's he doing? What's he waiting for? Come on, let's get this going, right? I mean, he's not asserting himself as the king. He's not taking control over Jerusalem. He's not removing the Romans. Okay? He's not enabling the temple to function according to the law of God. So until he does, they have a reason to reject Jesus as the Messianic King. All right? I mean, if he's the Messianic King, then let's do it. No? Well, then he's not the Messianic King. All right? I mean, well, there is a reasonable argument from that perspective of why he's not the Messiah. Okay? People can use that same line of thinking, that same way of thinking as a reasonable excuse today. Where you say, well, Jesus is the Savior. He's the King. He's the one who we should trust in and believe in. And people will say, okay, well, I'm sick. I need healing. All right? Or I have an injury. I need help. Where is he? He can do it. If he doesn't do it, then why should I believe in him? He's not doing what I think he should be doing, what he would be able to do. What about all the conflict in the world? He could do something about that. What about all the problems? What about all the people who are hungry? People who are having problems getting the basic necessities for life. Those people who are poor. Why is he not? He's able to help them. He's not helping them. So why should I believe in Jesus? And that goes back to the idea of what is the definition? What is it that we are to believe in concerning Jesus? All right? And so when people have these definitions, they establish a reason to reject Jesus. All right? And, there are people who want to reject Jesus. They want to reject God because if they were to accept God, then they would have to concede to the consequences related to that. They're going to have to change their lives, maybe. They might have to give up some sin. They're going to feel a sense of condemnation. It's much easier to just simply reject him and say he doesn't exist, and we'll come up with some good reasons that we think will work. And they sound good to us, and that's what people will tend to do. But in this case, all right, here in John chapter 11, you can consider that the justification can be reasonable because Jesus is not functioning as the King of Israel in the way that the people were expecting. Now, he could have done that if the people would have embraced him as the Messiah. But because they rejected him as the Messiah, then he just simply did not follow through with that, mainly the leadership. They rejected him, and so he just continued his work, and he would accomplish these things in a different way. All right, so this is the scenario. This is the situation. You've got some people who believe, some people who don't, all right? And those who don't could very well just be waiting for him to do something, And so what happens when he dies? What happens then? All right, well, when that happens, now who's going to believe in him? The people who said that he is not the Messiah, we're not going to believe in him because he's not taking power, well, now they are justified. Their beliefs are justified. See? He's going to die, all right? There's nothing left to talk about. He said he was the Messiah. He's dead. He's gone. There's nothing left to discuss. It's over. I'm going to get on with my life. Those who did believe in Jesus, when they see him being captured and put on trial and crucified, now what are they going to believe? What are they going to believe now? Are they still going to believe in Jesus? Many of them would not continue to believe in Jesus because he died. All right? I remember asking that question when I was young and the subject of the Messiah was introduced to me. I remember I was at a school. I was young. I think I was in the 4th or 5th grade, maybe. And one of my fellow students, one of the kids there, there was some mention of the Messiah, and he said, "Well, Jesus is the Messiah." I said, "Really? Is that right?" So I go home, I talk to my rabbi, talk to my mom. I ask, "Well, isn't Jesus the Messiah?" And they said, "Well, no. Why? Because he died." Oh, okay. All right. So you got these people who, that was my first introduction to the topic. He died. Well, God, that makes sense, Okay, so he's not the Messiah. All right, same thing. You got these people here who are going to say that he's not the Messiah. Those who still kind of, they hung on to whatever they could believe, were waiting. All right, they were waiting, and they were the beneficiaries of the resurrection through Pentecost. They were waiting, but they didn't know what they were waiting for, really. They didn't understand the magnitude of what had happened or what was accomplished. Okay, they didn't know. What did they really believe? What did they know what to believe? All they could do was just, well, maybe we should just wait and see what happens. What else are we going to do? So that's what was going on. Some of them went back to their lives before. So to say that a person believed in Jesus, that has to be better defined. All right, now moving on, what did they do, right? In verse 46, but some of them went away to the Pharisees and told them the things Jesus did. All right, they went to the Pharisees, and then this, of course, was then brought before the Sanhedrin. We keep reading, and it was brought before the chief priests and the high priest. This is the Sanhedrin. And there were Pharisees who were representatives, who were members of the Sanhedrin. There were also some Sadducees, in addition to the chief priests and the high priest. A lot of people were involved. But there were people who went to go and tell them what happened. All right, which ones went? Was it the people who believed in Jesus because of what he did? Or was it the people who did not believe in Jesus? Okay, we can assume it was both. All right, let's start with the people who did believe in Jesus. They saw what happened. They didn't necessarily believe in Jesus before, but now they do. And so they go back to the Pharisees with the attitude of, hey, you people need to know what happened. We are here to tell you what happened. We're going to tell on Jesus, but we're going to tell you what happened because you had better reconsider your position like we have. This guy actually resurrected someone from the dead who had been dead for 4 days. He'd been in the grave for 4 days. That's past the 3-day deadline, all right? So we are here to tell you that this is serious, okay? In fact, you could also look at this from the point of view of bragging, where the people would go to the Pharisees and they would say, hey, come on, Jesus did this one. Come on, you ought to believe. Let's believe. Believe in him now. You better, because, hey, this guy is definitely who he said he was, who he says he is. All right, so they could be bragging about Jesus. They could be trying to get the Pharisees to reconsider their position. And then there were the others who rejected Jesus and said, and would go to the Pharisees and say, hey, look, this guy is claiming to be the Messianic king. Obviously, he's not, because if he was, What's he doing over there? He should be over here and be the king. But he's busy doing all this other stuff. He even resurrected Lazarus from the dead. Now, this is not going to work because he's not taking the power. He's not taking the authority. He's not preparing for war. So the Romans are just going to wipe him out. And all his disciples are going to get wiped out. And because we didn't do anything about this before they did, they're going to come to us and they're going to ask us the question, hey, why is it that you didn't solve this problem? So we had to come in and solve this problem. We got other things to do. We got things that we like to do. We would rather just, do our things. But now, there's this problem that you could have handled. You could have taken care of. You could have solved this. And you didn't take care of business. So now we have to put out the effort to go and deal with this issue. So this is what we're going to do now. We're going to find some other people to take your place. You're out. All right? You're fired. You're done. We're kicking you out. You're done. We're going to find somebody else who will do the job so we can do our things. You can take care of this. And if you blow it, if you fail, well, we're going to replace you too. Right? This is the relationship that existed between the Romans and the Sanhedrin. So the people would go and tell the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin, hey, look, you guys need to know about this, that things are getting to be quite involved. And so you had better be informed, and you really had better consider doing something about this, because if you don't, look, he's going to gain a lot more popularity. A lot more people are going to believe in him, follow him. But without war, without him taking power as the king like he needs to, without him doing that, look, we're all going to lose. Okay, our lives are going to be disrupted, and there's going to be some discomfort. So you better deal with this right away. You better deal with this soon. Again, in verse 45, then many of the Jews who had come to Mary and had seen the things Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went away to the Pharisees and told them the things Jesus did. So the Pharisees, the Sanhedrin assembles in verse 47. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered a council. All right, this would be effectively the Sanhedrin. Gathered a council and said, what shall we do? For this man works many signs. If we let him alone like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and nation. All right, now I've been speaking about this since the beginning of this study, right? I've been speaking about this since the beginning of this study, the idea that the people did not want to believe in Jesus because they did not want to face the consequences that they would face if they were to believe in Jesus. And here, this is it. Verse 48, they make it absolutely clear that that's exactly what the issue is. All right? They don't want to deal with the consequences that are related to this. Obviously, Jesus is not going to deal with the consequences. Where is he? Where's his sword? Where's his army? Come on. What does this guy really have to offer? If he's not going to take the throne, what has he got to offer? Oh, he's going to heal somebody? He's going to resurrect somebody from the dead? That's just going to incite more trouble. Come on, right? What does he have to offer? Okay? Now, the Romans had something to offer, unfortunately. It was what they took from the people in taxation. They would take something from the people, and then they would offer what they took from someone else. So that really isn't a legitimate offer either. But that's how the world functions. Okay? That's how the world seems to operate for the most part. People offer other people's stuff instead of their own. You know, they offer, well, what have you got to offer? Well, let's see who I can take something from so I can offer that to you. All right? Oh, you know, people like that should really be ashamed of themselves, but they're not. You know, they have no sense of shame. They have no sense of honor, no sense of integrity at all. It has nothing to do with any of that. It only has to do with, people just don't care. All right? They just they just want a commission off of what they take from one person and give it to somebody else. That's just the way the world is, and it is evil. It is evil, and evil like that will always be present. It's just something to understand. All right, now you've got the Romans who are going to potentially come and take away both their place and their nation. All right, and to say the nation means that it could go so far that they just simply wipe out the entire identity of the Israelite nation as a whole. They just simply say, look, this Judaism stuff is now against the law. All right? No more of that. You're all going to be Romans, just like us. You're going to believe in our gods. You're going to live the way we live. You're going to speak the language we speak, and that's it. You know, and if there's any complaints, well, we'll kill you or we'll deport you. You know, we'll send you to one of these other places that it's just you no longer have the infrastructure or the population or your friends in order to have this kind of way of life that you've been having anyway. In other words, the Romans will just say, you know what, this whole thing is done. All right? It's just over. That's the end. And we're not going to have any more of that ever again. And yes. All right? They were at great risk because, from their point of view, Jesus was not engaging in warfare. All right? He was not going to engage in the way that they wanted. So, what are they going to do? All right? What are they going to do? Keep moving into verse 49. And one of them, Caiaphas, being high priest that year, said to them, you know nothing at all. All right? I'll come back to who this guy is. Nor do you consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and not that the whole nation should perish. You guys are not considering the fact that it's more convenient for us to just kill him than for the rest of us to die. And he'll probably die too. So let's just kill him and get this over with. All right, now who is this Caiaphas? Who is this guy? This guy is the son-in-law of the true high priest, which was Annas at this time in history in accordance with the law. The Romans told Annas, look, you're not going to be the high priest. We're going to take your son-in-law and we're going to make him the high priest. We're going to say that he is the high priest. So Caiaphas would take this position, and of course he would be well paid. You know, he would be well paid, and the Romans would expect him to solve all of these little problems. You know, he's going to solve all these little problems, and of course he's going to solve them in a way that he can keep his job. All right? And who's paying him? The Romans are paying him. So his loyalty is going to be to the Romans. So for him to come up with a decision like this, or a suggestion like this, or a solution like this, is not unreasonable. To say, look, you know, this is the way we solve this. Either Jesus dies and everybody dies with him, or Jesus dies and the rest of us can just get on with our lives like normal. That's what he presents. All right? And so, you know, to believe in Jesus, it really needs to be better defined. Now, what he says is that it's better for one person to die for the nation than for everyone, for everyone to perish. Well, there is some meaning behind this. All right? He says, you guys don't know anything at all. Well, you know, we could say he doesn't know anything at all either. We could say that because from a different point of view, that's exactly what he did. He died for all people so that no one would have to perish. All right? Now, of course, a lot of people perish, but that's because of their rejection of the gospel. But that's what Jesus came to do. He came to die. All right? It was going to happen one way or another. So in this sense, Caiaphas knows nothing at all. All right? He says, you guys don't know anything at all. Yeah, well, you don't know anything at all either. And I could just imagine what the conversation would probably look like when Caiaphas went to heaven, or went to go before God. He probably went to hell after that. But first, it's a temporary moment in the presence of God in heaven to a certain limit, at the border kind of thing. And I could just imagine what this conversation would probably sound like. It would probably sound something like this. Now Jesus, because Jesus would probably be present, right? And he would say, I understand that, yeah, I'm the one who suggested it first, and I was obviously very much involved in having you killed. But look what happened, right? I mean, because of that, now, some good things have happened. You've been able to provide forgiveness for the sins of the world. All right? So, yeah, I was evil. Yeah, I killed you. Okay, yeah. But look at all the good things that have happened because of my evil. All right? So, you know what, Jesus, what this means? This means you owe me. All right? And I know some of you might be thinking, how could anyone think that way? All right? That they would actually say, possibly, to Jesus, you owe me. You owe me. All right? Because of what I did to you, I killed you, or I tried to kill you. I was definitely a participant that caused all this pain, suffering, harm, destruction. I'm the one. But because it worked out, for your benefit, you owe me. Okay. So you need to give me a place in the kingdom of heaven. All right? And you might think, how could people? Yes, people think that way. All right? They really do. All right? They really do think. I know people like this who just it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much evil they place or they conduct. It doesn't matter how evil they are to someone. If they succeed in causing harm and evil to this person, they feel like they have accomplished something, and they have good feelings, good hormonal imbalances. They feel the sense of accomplishment. And so they will have done good. But if they fail and the other person benefits from their stupidity, all right, the other person benefits from their evil, that in some way things work out better, well, then the evil person will say, see, now you owe me. And absolutely, okay, absolutely there are people like this. And so, that could very well have been what took place, and I will probably check on that when I enter into the kingdom of heaven, just to see if that conversation even happened, if anyone remembers. Probably long forgotten. All right, but this is this is what's going on. Is that Caiaphas says you people know nothing at all, but the reality is that he doesn't know anything at all himself. And what happens as a result of this is that there is the forgiveness of sins, and this invokes the new covenant. This is what makes it possible for the new covenant to go into effect. Because with the sin issue over, he will remember our sins no more. People can begin to know their God All right, and they could be made alive. They can know their God, and the relationship between he and them can begin and will continue to grow throughout eternity. So this was what was going on, and this was the transition in order to get there. So what happens is in verse 51, now this he did not say on his own authority, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation, and not for that nation only, but also that he would gather together in one the children of God who were scattered abroad. Then from that day on, they plotted to put him to death. Therefore, Jesus no longer walked openly among the Jews, but went from there into the country near the wilderness to a city called Ephraim, and there remained with his disciples. All right, so that was the end of Jesus ministering openly in that sense. He finally made it to the point where the religious leaders had made a decision, we are going to find a way to get this guy killed. That is now the solution. All right, that is what they were going to pursue. Okay, so I'm going to pause here. I know this is a little bit short. This is a shorter message than what I've done before, but I personally think this is just simply a good place to pause. I will come back and finish up chapter 11 in the next message. For those of you who are using this for small groups, I've got a question for you guys to consider to facilitate some discussion. Why do people believe in Jesus? Okay, why do people believe in Jesus? What does it mean for people to believe in Jesus? And of course, you have to ask people individually. But from your experience, you probably have a pretty good feel for why people believe in Jesus, what it means to them to believe in Jesus. Probably the most common would be to say that Jesus died for my sins so I can go to heaven when I die. That's what I believe. Jesus died for my sins. I believe it. Okay? So when I physically die, I'll have a place to go in the kingdom of heaven. And that's it. They believe in some of the things that he did in the past, that are recorded in the Gospels. They believe that he said a number of things that we have quoted in the Gospels. But beyond that, their belief in Jesus and what that means to believe in him, it just doesn't go much further than that. There are other people that believe in Jesus in the sense that, well, he was a good man. He was a good teacher. All right, well, that's definitely not going to get you much closer to salvation than where you were before. Because if you really did believe that, then you would believe a number of other things. What does it mean to believe in Jesus? What are some of the things that people hold on to? What are some of the things that people believe, and how is it that they define that kind of an idea? And of course, in understanding that, you can understand a little bit more about the limits concerning how far they might go. And there is a big difference between believing in him and knowing him. There is a big difference between the two. You can believe in him, but you just don't know him at all. And I don't think that this is what he had in mind. I really do believe that we have a God who wants us to know him, not just sort of believe in him, or believe that, okay, believe what? Believe that he's going to let us in his house when we show up at his door. We believe that he doesn't hold our sins against us. Well, do we really? All right, this is an opportunity for a lot of discussion, a lot of conversation, and the reason for this kind of a question is not to have some opportunity to criticize other people or to puff up our pride and say, see, we're not like one of those people who believe that or believe this or believe that. But perhaps it would be better to remember that we were probably believing those things ourselves, and that was about all we believed at one time also. And to appreciate that this is a lifelong journey for a lot of people to live and to hopefully make it a little bit further than where they are. But the purpose of this kind of a question, my intent behind it, is to increase our understanding of other people, to make it easier for us to have effective conversations with people, so that we can perhaps be a part of just nudging them a little bit further than where they are, and to understand where their limitations may be and how far they may be able to go, to better select and to pick what we might be able to bring up with them that they would be willing to receive in terms of continued conversation, continued thought, continued consideration, so that maybe they could move forward a little bit more towards that which would be considered to be a much better way of believing in Jesus. Okay, so that's what I have for this message right here, and I will continue to finish chapter 11 in preparation for making my way into chapter 12 in the next message. Thanks.